Greetings and welcome to Wellspring Community Church. My name is Wendy Musgrave and I'm the pastor at Wellspring Community Church. I'm delighted to have you joining us this morning. We are continuing in our Easter series because Easter isn't just one day. It's an entire season in which we look for those signs of resurrection, signs of new life and hope and restoration. In this time of great uncertainty, we also seek comfort and reassurance. We want to know that we are not in this alone. I am so thankful for this community of faith and for the ways that we are in this together. Even though we are social distancing, there need not be any distance in our hearts. For we know at the heart of the matter, we are connected through the Spirit which makes us one in love. If you have a candle nearby, I invite you to light it now as we welcome the light of Christ into our midst. As we begin, let's just center ourselves. I invite you to take a deep breath. And I invite you to place your hand on your heart and just breathe. Feel the rhythm of your heartbeat. Holy living God, heartbeat of creation, help us to take this time to center in you. For you made us, you gave us life, and you continue to be with us in every moment. With every breath. In every step. Let's take another deep breath together and just release any tension that we may feel in our bodies, letting go of all of that tension as we exhale. I invite you now to pick up your heart stone, sometimes called a worry stone, and just touch its surface. And let your touch remind you that God is with us, between us and around us. As close and as real as this object is in our hands right now, is how close love is to us always. So I invite you to just imagine letting go of your worries for now into God's heart of love. Now let's set our heart stones down next to our candle so that they can bask in the light of Christ. Holy One, we offer into your care all of our worries and our fears and our anxieties. We turn to you and we know that you are near. Your light is our love and life. The idea of tomb as womb of new life has really resonated with me this season. This season is focused on resurrection, on the ongoing cycle of dying away to make way for new life. But oh my goodness, resurrection is difficult. I don't know why I am so surprised by that each year. Of course it is. Easter is a season of promise, born out of pain and death. In the face of oppression and domination of empire, our gospel says no. This is not the end of our story. Our context of COVID-19 this year makes everything look a little bit different. The virus is so vividly bringing to light the inequity in our systems as we see certain groups of people shoulder the bulk of the burden. This virus reminds us of our frailty, of our mortality, of the preciousness and the risks of living. And all the while, we are not able to gather physically as we process through this really hard stuff. In this season that is typically celebratory, we have grieved. We have hoped. We asked, how long do we have to wait? We've searched for signs of hope, hope that is not the absence of suffering, but the strength to persevere in the midst of suffering with our eyes on the promise of redemption. And that is hard work. I was thinking this week about tomb as womb and the struggle we are living through, and about Mother's Day and the strong, resilient, nurturing women I've been blessed to have in my life. And a passage from Isaiah came to me. The book of Isaiah is one of my favorites because it is so rich with imagery that helps us to find multiple ways to imagine the complex mystery that is God. In Isaiah 42:14, God says this, "I've kept still for a very long time. I've been silent and restrained myself. Like a woman in labor, I will moan. I will pant. I will gasp." What an intriguing way to consider God's action in the world. God as mother, through pain and struggle, birthing something new. This week, as I was wrestling with this text and our context and trying to pull together my thoughts, Nate shared with me a poem that he had written, and he's given me permission to share it with you today. This is a poem by Nate Kirstein. On a few eves from Mother's Day, justice remains a dream for birthers, whose sons can't escape white bullets. Over hundreds of years, weeping and wailing, open caskets, closed cases, rarely resolved, no value given, children of Mother's Earth's hues, mirror of creation's beauty, richly dark and brown, found only as threats to be hung and analyzed for all to see, murder justified for being, while whites remained silent under arrest of guilt, privilege their prison, to complacently sit while these mothers march on to the same song sung for centuries. The question remains, how long? Wow. In Nate's words, in the face of mothers weeping and wailing over open caskets and closed cases, I thought of God as laboring woman, laboring for justice, redemption, and healing. This resurrection is hard work. The context of this passage from Isaiah is Deutero-Isaiah, the portion of Isaiah that scholars believe was written during the time of exile to a people who had been trounced. They had been destroyed. Their friends and families had been torn apart. They'd been violently forced out of their homes and neighborhoods and scattered without much hope for return to normal on the horizon. It was bad. Into this context of despair and loss, Deutero-Isaiah provides hope through reminders of a God who has promised never to abandon them. Isaiah encourages the exiles that even though it looks bad, it looks like there is no way out of their circumstance, God is still in charge, and God has not forgotten the promises made. I love the image of God as a laboring woman. It's interesting that Isaiah uses 3 different verbs to describe the action of what is happening in the labor process: moan, pant, and gasp. All 3 of these verbs vividly describe breathing, breath. The first word that's translated moan in our passage speaks of a guttural noise, a groan or a bellow. It is deep. This is sometimes translated cry out. The breathing words gasp and pant paint a picture of a breath that is labored. It's breathing that is a struggle. I found it really interesting that the Hebrew word translated pant here is elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible translated longing, like longing for something to happen, and also tramples, like tramples our enemies. This labored breath speaks of a longing for reversal. It is anticipatory breath, a yearning for justice. As any laboring woman can tell you, bringing forth new life is not easy. God is in the struggle for new creation. How beautiful that once again breathing comes to the forefront. God breathes life into humankind in Genesis. The laboring God breathes restoration into God's people. The Spirit, breath of life, ushering in new creation. In his letter to the Romans, Paul wrote, "We know that the whole of creation is groaning together and suffering labor pains up until now." And it's not only the creation, we ourselves who have the Spirit, the pneuma, breath, as the first crop of the harvest also groan inside as we wait to be adopted and for our bodies to be set free. Just a few verses before this passage in Isaiah, in which we find the laboring woman, we read the words, "Sing a new song to the Lord. Sing praise." God is working and moving and laboring for redemption. God has not abandoned us in the struggle. This is reason to sing. 16 years ago this week, I was a woman in labor for the very first time. It is a mystery and a miracle, and I couldn't have made it through on my own. First of all, baby Greta played an active role in this, releasing hormones that signaled to my body that the time was ripe as she approached that threshold into the world. I had John by my side and nurses who cared for me and coached me and supported me throughout the process. I had to hit pause for just a bit, which really is not easy in the midst of active labor, to wait for my doctor, who was hung up in traffic. But when she arrived, she carefully, safely delivered Greta, in and delivered her into my arms. If God is like a laboring woman, then perhaps we can see that God doesn't do this work alone, that we must be active participants in the process of birthing justice. Like a laboring woman, I will moan, I will gasp, I will pant. This is such an intense mix of vulnerability and power. The vulnerability of this metaphor is intriguing, and maybe it's even an uncomfortable way for us to think about God. To a people who had lost everything in violent and horrible ways, Isaiah is reassuring them that God is still with them, that God is still sovereign. And I'm guessing that that had to be kind of a hard sell in their context. I appreciate the work that Lauren Winner has done with this metaphor in her book, Wearing God, in which she explores several of the overlooked ways of meeting God in the Bible. She writes this in her book: "A woman in labor is a curious picture of sovereignty. A woman in labor cannot protect herself. She's dependent on others, and at the same time, she is experiencing a profound power. She is receiving help. At the same time, her body is strong and knows what to do to deliver. Hers is a sovereignty in which the best tool is not a scepter or a gun, but breath, panting, groaning, bellowing. In their darkest hour, the exiles wondered, 'God, where are you?' In the final hour, Jesus cried out, 'My God, why have you forsaken me?' In the image of the laboring woman, we see that God does not respond with silence. God groans, gasps, and pants, making a new way for the exiles, breathing life into the whole of creation, offering God's own body to be broken open for the sake of the world God created. Of course, Christianity has always claimed that strength and power are something different than we had assumed they were. Christianity has always told us to look at the cross to see how this is so. But maybe Isaiah is saying that we could just as well look at the birthing stool. I think that's beautiful. Both the cross and the birthing stool place God in the midst of vulnerability and invite us to rethink what we think about strength. This resurrection is hard work. The gospel tells us over and over again to look for God in the vulnerable. The last will be the first. The crucified Jesus embodied vulnerability. The empire thought that they had the final word, that they had put an end to this Jesus of Nazareth, this troublemaker, agitator, king of the Jews who healed on the Sabbath and hung around with all the wrong kinds of people. But death was not the end of the story. The tomb was the womb of new life. The power isn't in the empire. The power is in vulnerability. And that makes this difficult work. And once again, here we are, being encouraged to breathe into it. We can't turn our eyes and make it go away. The only way out is through. The God of justice moans and pants and gasps and says, "Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing God's praise from the ends of the earth." So what is your new song? The resurrection song that you are singing now to aid in the birthing of this new life in our time. Whenever I attempt to wrap my brain or my arms around the mystery of God, I always seem to come back to paradox. And this week, this has been vulnerability and power. How have you experienced power through vulnerability in your walk of faith? Today is Mother's Day, and I've been reflecting a lot this week on the many women who have left their mark on my life. I thank God for my mom and my sister and my grandmothers, to whom I owe much of who I am. To my mom, I owe my confidence to take on just about any project, big or small, using what I have on hand to make something more beautiful than I found it. To my sister, an amazing mother and teacher, she inspires me through the ways that she advocates for her kids, innovating and sacrificing to find creative ways for each one to flourish. My grandma Elvira taught me, sometimes the hard way, but always through a heart of love, to laugh at myself and not take myself too seriously. And from my Grandma Jane, I attribute my desire to see the good in all things and the challenge to view all of life through a lens of gratitude, no matter the circumstance. Of course, there are the young women who call me mom, my daughters who inspire me with their creativity and curiosity. I have a lot of women to be thankful for today, some of whom are related to me, and other women who have nurtured and loved me in all different kinds of ways. There was Lily, the neighbor we lived next to when I came home as a newborn baby. I didn't have grandmothers in town, but I had Lily, and her warm heart welcomed and loved me. I remember the traditional Danish treats she would bake, and the way that she lovingly raked her olive green shag carpeting every day so that it would look as fresh as the day she invited it into her home. A home that always radiated hospitality, ready to receive any guest. Then there was Hazel, another grandma neighbor in a new neighborhood who kind of adopted my mother as a daughter and my sister and I as her own. Even though we only lived near her for less than a year, she remained connected with us throughout her life. I remember her beautiful quilts and all of the time that she spent lovingly creating these quilts for so many people. I remember that at every milestone in my life, she made the journey to be a part of our family and to celebrate with us. When I was confirmed, when I graduated from high school, when I was married, she was there. She lovingly made quilts for my babies when they were born. And then there was Leah, my accompanist throughout my high school music career. Her home became like a second home to me as I practiced an array of vocal selections. She shared her time and her gift of music with me, but she shared so much more. She shared her stories, her life, her wisdom. She taught me to love big band music. She was so brave and her heart was so full of adventure. And she inspired me to want to be brave and to seek out adventures of my own, not to be held back by cultural norms or perceived barriers. I am forever thankful for these gentle and powerful, nurturing and bold, loving women. I am thankful for the ways that they have embodied the divine for me along my journey. This week it was so wonderful to have my inbox fill with photos and memories of the women who have left their mark on your lives. I hope that you will be blessed by this collection of images that represent the women who have warmed the hearts of Wellspring. Blessings to all the women who nurture and teach and challenge and support and encourage us in creative ways, both quiet and bold. I hope that you will find some time today to reach out to someone who has played an active role in your life and let her know how much you appreciate her loving spirit, her presence. Let her know what she means to you and to the world. As we close our time together today, remember, God is always with you, no matter what you face, no matter what trials or hardships come your way. God is right beside you, offering love straight from the heart, guiding and directing your path. So acknowledge your fear and your worry as it arises, and know that it is as true and as holy as any feeling, including joy and hope and love. And I pray that this week you experience joy and hope and love in abundance. Take heart. This is the heart of the matter. Go in peace. Amen.